Jenny Beth, thank you for your leadership and what all of you have done here to create a movement that serves the American interest, the national interest, the people's interest. Isn't that what it's all about? Not the special interest, the national interest, the people's interest. That's what we need to be focused on. And I think we're losing sight of that too often today. And Tea Party Patriots, you've been there. You've made a difference. Goodness gracious, think 2010. You don't know what it was like in the Senate with Democrats with 60 votes. Yes, you do. We got Obamacare, didn't we? On 60 to 40, passed on Christmas Eve. Nobody had read the thing. Nobody understood the thing. All they knew was it was going to be a massive intervention of the federal government into one of the most complex areas in our country, health care. And we were going to make it better, right? It was going to help the economy, create jobs, save money, reduce cost, all of those things, and they were all false. It was just not true. And it's just a terrible time. Steve Bannon, you are extremely an effective warrior. I think a warrior is a good word for him. I think you've been worthy of the legacy you've been given, and it's a pleasure to see you work that way. But that big sweep in 2010, there was so much dependent on you, changed America. Yes, we've done some bad things. Yes, we've done a few little good things and taken a few steps in the right direction, but big, dangerous Obamacare-type policies cannot be passed today because of that fabulous victory in 2010. Gave us the House, the biggest Republican sweep for the Republicans in 70 years, 2010. And we need to move forward in the Senate this time. And I'm telling you, it is, we need to hold our Republican colleagues accountable. But I tell you one thing, we're not getting any votes from the Democrats on the key issues out there. And I'm excited about this possibility, as you probably have heard about today. So, well, I feel like that the movement you spawned and participated in is right on every major issue. We are bankrupting America. We're abandoning the Constitution and the rule of law, and we're expanding government at every turn, all contrary to the great heritage that we have as Americans. It's a different thing that's happening out there, and we need to be prepared about it. So they say you're extreme. They push back and say you're extreme. But I say extreme is running up $17 trillion in debt. Or extreme is a 2,700-page health care bill that nobody could understand and is doing great damage to America. Extreme is a president who won't enforce laws on the books and then enforces laws that are not on the books. Extreme is embracing an immigration policy that validates illegality and triples the number of people who would be brought into our country at a time of high unemployment and weak growth. And so extreme is declaring that we're to maintaining a debt path that's unsustainable. I'm the ranking Republican on the Budget Committee. We see the numbers. I think you understand them intuitively, but if you'll forgive me, I'll just have to say a few things this moment about the future of our country financially. Mr. Elmendorf, the director of the Office of Management and Budget, basically appointed during the Democrat majority in both houses. He's an honorable man. It's a hard job. This is what he told us last week. He analyzed next year and 10 years the budget window. This is what he told us. We remain on an unsustainable path. That is not a word he chooses lightly. He knows exactly what he's saying. He's saying if we stay on this financial path, there's going to be a reckoning out there. And in fact, he went so far as to say what many, many economists have told us, we're on a path to a fiscal crisis. Indeed, Bernanke, when he was chairman of the Fed, testified before us, and somebody said these numbers are getting worse over the next 10 or 20 years. He said, well, you don't worry about that. You're not going to get there. If you don't get off this path, we're going to have a fiscal crisis before that. So this is the kind of thing that we're facing. And what did you see in the president's remarks Monday? The era of austerity is over. We hadn't had any austerity first, but I would suggest to you, you're a sophisticated crowd, and I said this on the floor of the Senate this morning. This was a clear statement of what his agenda is. He is not going to take any action to control spending. He's going to continue to produce more spending, more debt, and more taxes. And he's going to accuse Republicans, as they tried to this morning, when we could not support a veterans bill that busted wide open the Budget Control Act numbers that we just approved and the president signed 4 weeks ago. I mean, we were all seeing 4 weeks before the ink is dry on the agreement, and they're proposing an Senator Sanders, you know, the socialist from Vermont, he claims that. He's an independent. He's not too liberal for the Democrats, I guess. Well, Senator Sanders was the chairman of the committee. He proposed the bill, and it was all unfunded. We could have paid for things that we need to for the veterans, and we showed how you could do that. But my point of which is, they're challenging us frontally. And that challenge is that we're going to spend, and we're going to make you vote Republicans. And when you vote against children, you vote against veterans, you vote against old people, you vote against health care, we're going to beat you in the next election. But I would say to you that it's a time for choosing. It's a time for courage. We simply have to at least adhere to the budget limits that we've agreed to. Now, the Ryan Murray bill that passed eased the Defense Department's problems and spent some more money and fixed that crisis that I was really worried about. I didn't like the way they did it, but it fixed that. But it reaffirmed the fundamental debt ceiling limits on spending that we agreed to. And we're going to have to adhere to them. I hope that you'll be supportive of us and hope you'll defend people when they're attacked for simply saying, we agreed to these spending limits. And what are they? Fundamentally, it was this. In 2011, the Budget Control Act was passed. It included the sequester. That was part of it. It reduced the growth of spending by $2.1 trillion. We were on path, according to the Congressional Budget Office, to increase the debt of the United States by $10 trillion. By passing the Budget Control Act, we would only increase the debt of America by $8 trillion. It was not a cut in spending. It was a cut in the growth of spending, and not a huge, dramatic cut level that we could not sustain as a nation. So I thank you for your concern about that and taking us in the right way. Now, what is the agenda of the left? Everywhere that it's been used, the left and has been faithfully implemented, disaster has occurred. Look at America. Look at Greece. Look at France. Look at places like Detroit, where tax and spend and regulate and big government and distributing welfare and programs of that kind can destroy the very people that it's supposed to try to help. I wish we could do better about that. So they accuse, in explaining it, and they accuse Republicans of being unkind, unloving, uncompassionate, wanting to hurt people. And we've not been very good at responding. We've said things, you remember, what was that, things like, well, that's class warfare. You know, now that's not a very strong thing to say. When they've attacked your very character, your very decency, your very goodwill motivation for America, to say that you don't like people who are hurting, you have no desire, no plan, no idea to help them, you're just against them. That's the charge the left has made against us, and we need to stand up to it. And we've got to respond, and we've got to say, we, we've got to say your policies, it's your policies that have trapped millions in poverty and despair, not ours. And we are determined to change it and put this country and the American people on a pathway to prosperity and not dependence. We can say that correctly. So where are we today with these big government programs that have been carried on for the last over 5 years? We've got the slowest recovery from a financial recession since the Great Depression. It's really abysmal. 2 years ago, the Congressional Budget Office said we'd have 4.6% growth last year in 2013. It was 1.9. They've missed it, always higher than it came in. And a lot of this is the government policies. Fundamentally, I believe it's the flaws in the policies of this administration. It's just amazing. 20 million people are unemployed, underemployed, or discouraged from working. 2/3 of the people who got a job last year only got a part-time job. If you're aware of that, that is very much driven by Obamacare. Businesses aren't required to meet these rules and regulations if the person is a part-time worker. They claim their plan was going to help workers. It's hammered workers. Nearly the share of the population actually working today is the lowest in almost 40 years. More and more people are dropping out of the workforce. This is not healthy for a vibrant and productive America. Nearly 1 in 2 recent college graduates are underemployed. Wages are lower today than they were in 1999. And the decline in wages has accelerated in the last 3 or 4 years under President Obama. And 1 in 5 households, Steve, I try to make sure my facts are right. I make my staff, when they put a fact, to put a footnote in it like you used to do when you're writing a brief to the Court of Appeals, where you got the facts. And they're pretty good. So I saw it's 1 in 5 households are on food stamps. So I called my food stamp guru this afternoon and said, is that right? I've been saying that. I found that I almost can't say those words. He said, he checked the numbers, read me the numbers again. 1 in 5 Americans are on food stamps. So I would tell you the economic condition of this country is dire. The American working people are not happy. The American working people are hurting. This is an unusual event in the history of our republic. And I think they're ready to hear a contrary message. They're ready to hear a message of growth. Well, what have they done? What did the president and his team do? And they back him rubber stamp like. I sometimes accuse them of being lemmings for Harry Reid, my Democrat colleague, with affection, but for the president and Harry Reid. But this is their policy, an anti-energy policy, a regulatory policy that's hammering small businesses and costing us jobs and competitiveness, a health care policy that's shrinking the workforce and weakening the quality of health care, a tax policy that enriches Washington, the most dynamic economic growth center in America, is right in this circle here, while it's impoverishing the middle class, sucking up money all over America so it can be spent around this forsaken capital. An ineffective trade policy that allows our wealth to be drained abroad when we can do better. An easy money policy by the Fed that helps big guys get low interest, but a saver gets almost nothing on the money they try to save. An immigration policy that is flooding the country with low-skilled labor at a time our low-skilled Americans are struggling just to get by. A welfare policy that helps the bureaucrats. They get more and more jobs, but are trapping families into poverty rather than lifting them out of poverty. A crime policy that is not sufficiently focused on the public safety and a spending policy that imperils our very future. More debt, more spending, and more regulation. That's their agenda, really. This is where the disputes come up every time on the floor of the Senate. It's an expansion of new program. It's a spending more than we agreed to. It's a raising of taxes. Those are the fundamental disputes that come up repeatedly. But I think we can build a Republican, a conservative majority in the country. The most important political fact right now is the public's growing loss of faith and trust in the political and financial elites in this country. They're not confident in them. They've lost confidence in them. I think it's correct that they've lost confidence in them because I believe the elites are failing America. They're failing the people of America. I think they've forgotten what is really important. They've lost contact with what it's like to be out here, a single mom, a working guy, trying to raise a family and take a vacation and do some of the things that many of these guys feel like they're easily for them to fund in any moment. And so my party, the Republican Party, needs to sever itself from this elite consensus. We need a break from that. We need to tell Wall Street, you know, we love you. Davos, I hope you have a good time over there. But we're going to be representing everyday Americans by the millions. That's who we're responsible for. That's who we're going to defend. Oh, Governor Romney trailed President Obama among the voters from 30 to 50,000 in income by 15 percentage points. Among the people under 30,000, he lost that vote by 28%. So this is how you get to this idea like, well, you can't win an election with 47%, can you? The way, but these workers, these Americans, these citizens are not happy with President Obama. They don't want to be on food stamps. They don't believe in these policies. They're worried that we're barring ourselves into oblivion. And they are obtainable. That's the vote that we can get back. And we can get it back if we appeal to them and talk to them correctly. It just bothers me that people don't see that. So after the election, and we didn't do as well as we'd like to do last time, what did our geniuses say? These high-paid consultants, very, very high-paid consultants. Well, in the wake of our defeat last time, their plan was to pass an immigration bill. That's going to fix it, right? And that a plan that would reduce the wages of American workers, 50 and 30,000 below. So we got to get our party, my party, on a new program, a new direction, and to embrace some new issues. Our modification of our official stance, I think, on two issues will be good policy for America, and will send a message that we hear you, America. We've been a bit tone deaf, America. We acknowledge that. There's some things that we can do that are going to be a little different than you've heard from us before, and we mean it. And it isn't just rhetoric. It isn't just messaging. It's policy changes that we're going to make a difference about. And it's immigration and trade, in my view. Those are two additional issues in addition to the fundamental principles that most conservatives and Republicans have adhered to for years. In the last 40 years, we've had a really unchecked record of immigration. We're virtually the highest percentage of non-native born Americans in our history. Wages have, however, fallen. The workforce has shrunk, and welfare rolls have surged. All hadn't been good. From 2000 through 2013, all net employment gains went to immigrant workers, while the number of American workers with jobs fell by 1 million. In other words, the 5 million or so immigrants that came in, we had about 4 or 5 million jobs created. So mathematically, that's what happened. Professor Borjas at Harvard says that at current levels of immigration. He's the acknowledged leading expert on immigration, wages, and labor policy in the country himself, an immigrant from Cuba. He said at current levels of immigration, there's a loss of $400 billion in wages, particularly for lower skilled workers, $400 billion. And it's paid for almost dollar for dollar by additional profits for the businesses that hire workers. Labor and wages are free markets. You tell me businesses say, well, Jeff, we've got a shortage of workers. I say, how can you have a shortage of workers when wages are going down? Don't you believe in the free market? Believe in the free market when you want to make your profits? You ought to believe in the free market for the working guy. From 1980 to 2000, he says that the average lower skilled workers lost $80 a month during those years. The Fed Reserve study in Atlanta showed a very significant drop in wages for working people in Atlanta as a result of the surge of immigration in Atlanta. There are consequences to this. So who do we represent? Who's paying the piddle? The guy in New York? Some guy's going to put his money in some emerging market one day and another place the next. So every year we admit roughly another million people. Most of these are lower skilled. We really need to alter that policy like Canada or Australia or the UK, so more of the people that come speak English, have education, and have prospects to be successful here. So look, you know, we need to stop and say, as all of us understand, we believe in immigration. We're not against, we're trying to eliminate all immigration. We let a million a year, which is the largest of any country in the world. And if we stayed at that level, that'd be one thing. But they're talking about tripling the number, more than doubling the number of guest workers. And in the next 10 years, under current law, we would admit 1 million people to legal permanent residence, green card status in America. That's 1 million a year, 10 million over 10. The bill, the Gang of Eight, moved through the Senate with unanimous Democratic support and the pressure from the president. That bill would give, on a regular basis, 15 million, 1.5 million per year over 10. It would admit and give legal permanent residence to the 11 million that are here unlawfully. They get a Social Security card and legal permanent residence immediately. And there's a so-called backlog, which isn't proper, isn't really accurate, but it's called the backlog of another 4.5 million. So you get, in the next 10 years, we would legalize under their bill 30 million people instead of 10. And the guest workers that don't count in those numbers, the people who come just to take jobs, they would double in the next, well, permanently. So I'm just telling you, this was a huge thing. Now, I never wanted to be engaged in this fight. I was on the Judiciary Committee. I'd been a federal prosecutor. I'd seen some of the immigration cases and prosecutions, and it just became like somebody's got to say something about this. So I guess one of the semi-manifestations of the Tea Party movement was in 2008 when the switchboard shut down over the vote on immigration. Do you remember that? The Senate was shut down. And I didn't know how the vote was going to be the next day. I'd been out there for a long time. Other people began to come in, and Jim DeMint and David Vitter and others, and we were battling away. And there's a very key, decisive vote, cloture vote. The day before, 64 senators had voted for cloture, to move to the bill. So then was the next big vote, and I told my wife, they may not get 60 tomorrow. I remember that. Ooh, I remember that. And so we came in, and I looked down. They were coming down the aisle and voting no, no, no. Only 46 voted, because the phones rang off the hook and people got the message. And this bill was worse than that one, trust me, in almost every category. Well, so polling shows a majority of Americans, they're not against immigration, but they want to see the immigration levels reduced, not increased. And when they hear talk about reform, and they hear talk about ending illegality, which would not have been occurred in this bill, but that's what they said about it, they thought we were going to see a reduction in immigration. A lot of people, so when you polled them, do you like this bill, they thought so. But the people, and Americans under 30,000 prefer a reduction to an increase by a 3-to-1 margin. Somebody needs to be talking to them here effectively, I think. So the Democrat plan delivers for the big international businesses and advocates of open border, the labor unions and the big businesses, and the Democratic politicians, all right, but the people left out are the American worker. And we need to stand up for them, in my opinion. Well, has the top brass in the GOP, they launched a campaign to make Democrats answer for these policies that hurt working Americans? No, you're right. In fact, those leaders remain on the verge, some of them still talking about offering a bill that will do many of the same things that were done in the Senate. And I was kind of taken aback today. I don't know if you saw it, probably not, because you've been busy. But I think Jake Tapper asked the speaker after he met with the president today, well, did you agree on anything? And he said, yes, immigration. Did that make... That's what I'm told happened today. Sorry to tell you that. But, well, today, a group of business lobbyists sent a letter to the House leadership demanding an immigration bill. They haven't quit. Here's how one of the signers, a prominent business executive and immigration activist, expressed his views on the need for more immigrant workers. This is the way they talk. Quote, most business leaders have long favored more open immigration. Different businesses want different kinds of people. A restaurant may want waiters and cooks. A hospital may want nurses and doctors. A university wants physicians. A business like Exelon needs more engineers. And I'd like a house on the beach. I don't know what you'd like. But business people don't get to dictate this. Well, we need more workers at the wage we want to pay. And you have to let that happen. And so somebody needs to say, well, sorry, Mr. Zuckerberg, I know you made billions of dollars and you're 29 and you're really smart, but forgive me, we don't agree. I mean, we have to set the national policy based on the national interest. And we can do much better than we're doing, in my opinion. So I don't think, is it not time that we made the Democratic Party, who voted unanimously in the Senate and virtually unanimously in the House, accountable for the unpopular policies they've been pushing on behalf of the special interest here? I think the Republican leaders should take that immigration letter they wrote over there and put it in an envelope and mail it to the White House and send it over there with a note. The note should read this: Mr. President, this letter must have been mailed to the wrong address. The White House. You guys in the White House may be doing the business of the special interest. We work for the American people. That's what we ought to say. So I think after 40 years of large-scale immigration, rising joblessness, falling wages, failing schools, growing welfare state, would not the sensible, conservative thing to do be to slow down a little bit and to allow wages to rise, assimilation to occur, and help the struggling Americans that are here today, Hispanic, African American, white, Asian, every group that's out there working? I think wages would begin to rise, and we wouldn't need the government passing a law to set wages if we did that kind of thing. And we need to do it boldly and unapologetically. We are not defensive about massive illegality. We insist that this illegality end, and it can end. It's not impossible. I've studied this. If we have a will to do this, we could do far more, far quicker than you ever know. But we're not there yet. Secondly, trade agreements are contracts. These are contracts between nation states that deal with trade relations. And I've supported virtually all the trade agreements that have been out there. And our business and all, they rely on trade agreements and the rule of law. But when we let our trade partners get the advantage of selling everything here, and we insist in no real serious way that they open their countries to our products, then we're getting taken to the cleaners here. So free trade does have to be fair trade. And these actions, this weak trade policy that's gone on too long has closed businesses and put millions of Americans out of work over time. And some of that was inevitable, I'll acknowledge. Some of that was probably inevitable. Things happen, we believe in trade and commerce, and we reach a certain level of efficiency that way. But I believe good businesses, sound businesses are not operating today. Millions of Americans are not working today because we haven't effectively defended our interest on the world stage, our workers on the world stage. And I think, so the average worker thinks we're in the pocket of big business. All we want to talk about is free trade, and what free trade means to them. What does it mean? It means that you're going to import more and close my business and threaten my job. So we need to express an interest and a concern and a passion for them and the fears that they have and the low wages they're suffering through. And I think America's in a position with low energy prices. I think we're in a position to be very competitive in the years to come. It's pretty exciting to me, but we've got to get off this big government tax debt problems that we've got today. So, and I will just share one idea that we've got. I got a good staff team. A pro-worker agenda must feature a bold plan to strengthen the welfare rolls and grow the employment rolls. Move people. We need to consolidate. Just consider this vision. We consolidate all the multiple welfare government subsidy programs into maybe essentially one office. There are over 80 now. And a person that needs aid goes to that office. And it functions like an employment office, a job training office. I met a lady in Alabama that had gotten 800 jobs. They counsel with people as a special project for a business that was closing. And they spent as much as 18 hours with each person. And they found out what their skills were, what their aptitudes were, what their abilities were, and they helped them find a place in the economy or the training they need to find a job. And they're expected to, but if a person won't show up for training, if they won't go to the job, or if they get fired and because they won't perform, then we can't support them forever with government support. The right thing to do is have a little tough love here and move people out, and it will be the right thing, and we can shift the focus from welfare to job training and work. And I really think that's a very doable thing for America today. All right, so I'll begin to wrap up and you can relax. All right. This is what we desperately need to do right now. And it's so amazingly close to the flip side, the opposite side of what's being done today in America, that it should be instructive to us. We need more American energy. I had a group of county commissioners in. They were teasing one guy. They found some oil in his county, and he was getting several $1 million more. Isn't that good? Would you rather have my county in Alabama getting a little oil money or Hugo Chavez's descendants or whoever's running Venezuela? And then they got jobs, infrastructure, cheaper energy, and all the money stays in America. American energy. How simple is that? We need a streamlined tax code. It is way too complex. But what they want to do, you hear them, they talk about closing loopholes, and the Republicans are all favoring closing loopholes, but the difference is this. They want to close the loopholes that on the 35% corporate tax rate, which is the highest in the world, which is hammering business development in America. They want to take the money and spend it. But it needs to be used to reduce the corporate rate to a more competitive world rate. And we've had Democratic experts. Democratic Chairman Max Baucus of the Finance Committee said you've got to use a loophole closing to reduce the rates. But no, the president doesn't do that, and that's not going to be the agenda of the Democratic majority. We need to eliminate excessive job-killing regulations. I hear it everywhere I go. These regulations stay in effect for 20 years. The technology has completely changed. It's just a burden. It makes us less competitive in the world marketplace. We need to repeal Obamacare. It is hammering the American worker and the American economy. It's devastating. I met a man in Alabama. He said he was a 49er. It took me a second. I figured it out fairly quickly. If you're under 50, you're not bound by this stuff. So he had 52 employees. He's reduced it to 49. He's going to stay at 49. 3 people lost a job right there. 2/3 of the jobs hired last year were part-time. I'm telling you, that is unprecedented, and it's not good. We need a trade and immigration policies that serves the national interest. We need to convert the welfare rolls to a job training center. We need to make our government leaner and more productive. We can do that. We can absolutely do it. And if our government is leaner and more productive, and the American people get more good things out of their government for the money that's extracted from them, it'll help the economy too. It'll be good for America and be the right thing. And we need to balance the federal budget. The deficits themselves are already, at this point in time, reducing economic confidence and pulling down the economy. And experts have told us that a debt this large, $17 trillion, growing another $10 trillion, threatens economic growth today, not just sometime out in the future. And getting our house in order would be good. Let me share this disturbing statement with you that just came out. Dr. Elmendorf gave us last week. Interest on the debt that we paid last year, 2013, was $230 billion. That is a huge sum of money. The federal highway bill is $40. And the federal aid to education, all of different programs, are about $100. The defense bill is $500. The biggest item, Social Security, is $700. So that's $230 billion. We pay first, right off the top. We get nothing for it. He projected over the next 10 years, with increased deficits and a modest return to normal interest rates over 10 years, that the interest on the debt 10 years from today would be $870 billion, bigger than anything in the budget today. Now, that's the kind of thing that threatens the future of America. It threatens our ability to function, and it's based on utter irresponsibility. And when the president says openly and directly the era of austerity, which has never occurred, is over, then what we know is that we've got a serious challenge for America. You need to be engaged in it, and I know you will be. So we have, I think, a proud conservative vision. The conservative vision is right and just and based on the experience of history and the wisdom of our founding fathers. It is who we are. It's an exceptional heritage we've been given. We believe in the dignity of work, and people who say there are jobs Americans won't do ought to be given a pop upside the head, as they say. President Bush's statement to that effect, I thought was the worst thing he ever said in his time in office, because you and I were taught that work is honorable and tough work is to be respected, and people who do their best should be respected. We believe in family and faith and charity. We believe that compassion is measured not by how much we spend on poverty, but how many people we lift out of poverty. We believe that our liberty rests on a foundation of law. And traveling my state this past week, I'm sure you share it, but I was really overwhelmed by the deep concern average citizens have about this presidency and this administration and their lawless attitude. Their willingness just to do whatever they want to do, regardless of the law. And it's a deep concern and fear out there. And as a person who so admires and values the American heritage of law, I see it as a dangerous threat. It's a postmodern relativism. They believe words have no permanent meaning. They just are able to make those words say whatever they want them to do to help them achieve their agenda today. And that's wrong. It's dangerous. It's contrary to the American heritage, in my view. We as conservatives are skeptical of government power, but trusting of the sound judgment of everyday citizens. Our goal is to go to Washington in order to make Washington less powerful, more efficient, to make sure that it serves the people, not dominates the people, as you do. Our goal is for free people to be able to live their lives in peace and security without a meddlesome, interfering, intrusive government. Our goal, the most solemn duty, I think, as we have, is to protect the America's children from a legacy of protect for our American children the legacy of justice and prosperity and liberty that is their sacred birthright. Thank you all. We'll continue to battle. You're playing a critical role in the future of America. And I gotta say, this election and the next one may well define the direction we take. Thank you for your participation. Thank you.